My daughter-in-law screamed that I was a freeloader who needed to pay rent or get out. I'm George Wilson, and at 68 years old, I thought I'd earned some basic respect. For 3 years, I'd quietly endured Jennifer's comments about my retirement lifestyle. She saw an unemployed burden living in her house, surviving on Social Security. She had no idea I'd been building something extraordinary. A $1.4 million portfolio, while she counted every dollar I supposedly cost them. What started as a family meeting about my financial contributions ended with revelations that shocked our entire community. You see, while Jennifer calculated my worth based on grocery receipts and utility bills, I was systematically growing wealth through long-term investments in blue-chip stocks and ETF funds, something she never bothered to ask about during those quiet morning hours when she assumed I was just watching TV. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me tell you how a woman who thought she held all the power learned that quiet wealth runs deeper than loud demands. The disrespect didn't start overnight. It built slowly, like water wearing down stone. 3 years ago, when my wife Margaret passed after her 12-year battle with Alzheimer's, I thought moving in with my son Daniel and his wife Jennifer would be temporary, just until I figured out my next steps. I was grieving, exhausted. I'd spent over a decade as Margaret's full-time caregiver, and honestly, I didn't know who I was without that responsibility. Jennifer seemed understanding at first. "Take all the time you need, Pop," she'd say. But I started noticing the little comments, the eye rolls when I'd sit in my leather recliner reading the Wall Street Journal, the way she'd change the subject when I mentioned anything about finances or investments. The first real sign came about 6 months after I moved in. I overheard her talking to her friend Sarah on the phone. "Supporting elderly in-laws is so expensive," she said, not knowing I was in the kitchen. "George doesn't work, obviously, lives on Social Security. It's like having a teenager who never moves out." I felt my face flush, but I said nothing. Maybe she was just stressed. The second sign was more deliberate. During family discussions about money, Jake's baseball equipment, vacation plans, home repairs, Jennifer would literally turn her back to me. When I'd offer input, she'd dismiss it with, "Pop, this is about real money, adult money, real money," as if my $1,847 monthly Social Security check was play money. As if the 12 years I'd spent managing Margaret's medical care, insurance claims, and medication schedules while she forgot how to speak had somehow erased my brain. What Jennifer didn't know was that those 12 years weren't lost time. They were preparation time. While she saw me reading financial newspapers as an old man's hobby, I was actually studying market patterns. While she assumed my quiet morning hours meant depression or laziness, I was analyzing stock movements and building strategies. You see, when you're caring for someone with Alzheimer's, you learn patience. You learn to observe without reacting. You learn to plan for the long term because every day brings new challenges. Those skills, they translate remarkably well to investing. But Jennifer never asked about my background, never wondered why I always seemed calm during financial discussions, or why Jake would come to me with questions about his allowance and savings accounts. She just saw what she wanted to see, a burden. The pattern became clear over those 3 years. Anytime I'd mention an article I'd read about market trends, she'd interrupt with something about real-world concerns. When I'd offer to help with financial planning, she'd pat my arm like I was a confused child. "That's sweet, Pop, but Daniel and I handle the grown-up stuff." Grown-up stuff. I'd been managing complex financial decisions since before she was born. But because I wasn't bringing home a weekly paycheck, my experience meant nothing. The breaking point was building. I could feel it in every dismissive comment, every excluded conversation, every time she'd explain to others how difficult it was to support me. But I kept quiet. I watched. I planned. Because here's what I learned during Margaret's illness. Sometimes the people who underestimate you give you the greatest advantage. They stop paying attention to what you're actually doing. And what I was doing during those quiet morning hours while Jennifer assumed I was wasting time. I was building something that would make her $85,000 marketing salary look like lunch money. But she was about to push me too far. And when that happened, the whole community would learn exactly what real money looks like. By spring of 2024, the tension in our house was thick enough to cut with a knife. Jennifer's demands were escalating, and I realized I was facing a choice that would define the rest of my life. If I stayed silent and just accepted her treatment, I'd lose everything that mattered to me. First, my relationship with Jake. My 16-year-old grandson was the light of my life, Every Tuesday and Thursday, he'd sit with me after school, and I'd teach him about compound interest, market fundamentals, and the power of long-term thinking. "Grandpa," he'd say, "you make this stuff sound so easy. Mrs. Patterson's economics class is boring, but when you explain it, it actually makes sense." Jennifer had started making comments about those tutoring sessions. "Pop, don't fill his head with fantasies about getting rich quick. Jake needs to focus on realistic goals." She was already planning to limit my access to him. I could see it coming. If she followed through on her nursing home threats, I'd be isolated from Jake during the most important years of his development. Those Tuesday and Thursday sessions would end. The college preparation I'd been helping him with would stop. Worse, he'd grow up thinking his grandfather was just a burden who got shuffled off when he became inconvenient. Second, my self-respect. I'd spent 43 years in financial services before taking early retirement to care for Margaret. I'd helped dozens of families build wealth, navigate market crashes, and secure their futures. To be dismissed as some clueless old man living on handouts? That cut deeper than Jennifer realized, but the biggest stake was Jake's future itself. See, Jennifer had no idea what I'd been building during my retirement. She assumed my careful budgeting meant poverty. She thought my simple lifestyle meant I had no resources. What she didn't know was that every dollar I wasn't spending on myself was being invested for Jake's future. The average cost of a 4-year college education was approaching $200,000. Jennifer and Daniel were saving, but at their current rate, they'd cover maybe half of that. Their plan involved Jake taking massive student loans, which would saddle him with debt for decades. I had a different plan. During Margaret's illness, I'd learned to live on very little. My needs were simple. Basic food, simple clothes, a warm place to sleep. Everything else went into investments. While Jennifer saw frugality, I saw opportunity. For 8 years, I'd been building Jake's education fund through careful day trading and long-term investments. The math was working beautifully. Compound growth, dividend reinvestment, strategic market positioning, all the skills I'd developed over 4 decades in finance were paying off. But if Jennifer forced me into a nursing home, I'd lose the ability to manage those investments actively. Nursing home costs averaged $4,500 per month in our area. That would drain the very funds I'd been accumulating for Jake's future. The timeline was critical. Jake was a junior in high school. College applications would start in 18 months. The money needed to be ready, and it needed to be substantial enough to cover not just tuition, but room, board, and living expenses without loans. Jennifer's ultimatum was about more than just rent money or family dynamics. It was about Jake's entire future. Would he graduate debt-free and ready to build his own wealth? Or would he start adult life already owing $100,000 to loan companies? She thought she was teaching me a lesson about contributing to the household. What she didn't realize was that I'd been contributing more than anyone imagined. Just not in ways she could see on a monthly bank statement. The stakes couldn't be higher. Jake's future, my dignity, our family's financial security. Jennifer was about to force my hand. And when she did, everyone would learn exactly how much this freeloader had really been contributing to this family's future. The first real confrontation happened on a Tuesday evening in early May. I just finished helping Jake with his economics homework when Jennifer walked into the kitchen where we were sitting. "Pop, we need to talk," she said, crossing her arms. "Sure. What's on your mind?" "Money. Specifically your contribution to this household." Jake looked uncomfortable. "Mom, I should probably—" "Stay," Jennifer said firmly. "You're old enough to understand how families work." I kept my voice calm. "What exactly are you concerned about?" "Daniel and I have been talking. You've been here 3 years, rent-free, eating our food, using our utilities. I buy groceries twice a week. I pay the electric bill. A bag of groceries and $60 doesn't cover your actual costs, Pop." Jake shifted in his chair. "Mom, Grandpa helps with lots of stuff." "Like what?" Jennifer's voice had that edge it gets when she thinks she's proving a point. "He helps me with math. He fixes things around the house. Those aren't real contributions, Jake. Those are hobbies." I felt something tighten in my chest, but I kept my tone level. "What would you consider a real contribution?" $800 a month. That's fair market rate for a room and utilities." $800? Jake's eyes went wide. "Your grandfather gets Social Security. It's time he contributed like an adult." I looked at my grandson's confused face, then back at Jennifer. "And if I can't pay $800? Then we'll need to explore other options. Senior living facilities, assisted care, places designed for people in your situation." "My situation? Pop, you're unemployed. You have no income except government assistance. Daniel and I are building our future. We can't be responsible for supporting you indefinitely." The word unemployed hung in the air like a slap. Jake's voice was small. "But Grandpa knows about money. He taught me about compound interest and—" "Jake, your grandfather reads financial magazines. That doesn't make him an expert. Real financial expertise requires actual work experience." I could have spoken up then. Could have mentioned my 43 years at Henderson and Associates. Could have explained my portfolio. Instead, I just nodded slowly. "When do you need an answer?" "End of the month. That's 3 weeks." After Jennifer left the kitchen, Jake turned to me with worried eyes. "Grandpa, $800 is almost half your Social Security check." "It is. That's not fair. You took care of Grandma for 12 years. You gave up your job to help family." "Life isn't always fair, buddy. But you're not unemployed. You know more about money than anyone I know." I squeezed his shoulder. "Some people only see what they want to see." "Are you going to pay it?" I looked at this kid I loved more than my own life. Smart, curious, worried about his grandfather's dignity. He deserved better than watching his family tear itself apart over money. "Jake, sometimes adults have to make difficult decisions. Whatever happens, you remember that I love you, okay? Grandpa, you're scaring me." "Don't be scared. Everything's going to work out exactly as it should." But inside, I was calculating. Jennifer had just drawn a line in the sand. She wanted to treat me like a tenant. Fine. But tenants have rights, and landlords have responsibilities. More importantly, she'd shown her true colors in front of Jake. No more hiding behind fake concern or family obligations. This was about money, pure and simple. She saw an old man taking up space in her house, and she wanted him gone. What Jennifer didn't realize was that she'd just given me clarity. For 3 years, I'd been hoping she'd eventually see my value to this family. I'd been patient, understanding, willing to overlook her comments because I thought she was just stressed. But tonight, calling me unemployed in front of my grandson, threatening nursing homes, dismissing Jake's respect for my knowledge as childish fantasy, she'd crossed a line. As I watched Jake struggle with the unfairness of it all, I made my decision. Jennifer wanted to play hardball. She wanted to reduce our relationship to dollars and cents. Perfect. Because dollars and cents were exactly what I'd been accumulating for 8 years. She thought she held all the power because she had a job and I collected Social Security. She was about to learn that power comes in many forms. And some forms are harder to see coming than others. The next few days felt different. There was a tension in the house, like the air before a thunderstorm. Jennifer had drawn her battle lines, but she'd also given me something valuable, a timeline. 3 weeks until her ultimatum expired. 3 weeks to make my decision. But I'd already decided. Now I just had to prepare. Thursday morning, I was sitting in my recliner with my usual cup of coffee and the Wall Street Journal. Jennifer walked through the living room on her way to work, and I saw her glance at me with that familiar look of disapproval. "Must be nice," she muttered, "having time to read the paper while other people work." I didn't respond, just kept reading. But Jake, who was eating breakfast at the kitchen counter, looked up from his cereal. "Mom, Grandpa's not just reading. He's taking notes. Look at all those papers on his table." Jennifer paused. For a moment I thought she might actually look, might notice the detailed charts I'd been updating, the stock analysis sheets, the portfolio tracking documents. But she just shook her head. "Hobbies, Jake. When you're retired, you need hobbies to pass the time." After she left, Jake wandered over to my chair. He picked up one of my notebooks, the one where I tracked my daily trades. "Grandpa, what's this number here? 1.4 million?" I closed the notebook gently. "Just tracking some hypothetical investments, buddy. Math exercises to keep my brain sharp. But these look real, these company names, these dollar amounts. Jake, your mother's under a lot of stress right now. Let's not give her more to worry about, okay?" He studied my face carefully. Jake was smart. Too smart sometimes. "Grandpa, are you actually poor?" I looked at this kid who'd been defending me to his mother for 3 years, who'd sat with me every Tuesday and Thursday soaking up financial knowledge like a sponge, who understood compound interest better than most adults. "Jake, what did I teach you about assumptions in investing? That assumptions can kill your portfolio faster than any market crash." "Exactly. And what's the first rule of information in finance? Information is power, but only if you know when to use it." "Very good." I patted his shoulder. Sometimes the most powerful position is the one nobody sees coming. He nodded slowly, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. Friday afternoon, something interesting happened. I was checking my phone for market updates when it rang. The caller ID showed Tom Bradford. Tom was one of my clients, or rather, one of the wealthy families I'd been quietly advising for the past 5 years. He owned 3 car dealerships and had built a substantial portfolio based on my recommendations. "George, I need to ask you about the tech sector rotation we discussed. My regular advisor is suggesting something completely different." "Tom, let me call you back in an hour. I'm not in a good place to talk specifics right now." "Sure thing. Oh, and George? My wife Linda was wondering if you'd be interested in speaking at the Chamber of Commerce dinner next month. About investment strategies for small business owners. I'll think about it." After I hung up, I noticed Jake standing in the doorway. He'd heard the entire conversation. "Grandpa, that man called you about investment advice." "He did. But Mom says you don't know about real money." "Your mother knows what she knows, Jake. And Mr. Bradford owns those car dealerships downtown. The big ones." "He does." Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Grandpa, you're not what you seem, are you?" I smiled at him. "Jake, in 3 weeks, you're going to learn that very few people are exactly what they seem, including your grandfather. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? That depends entirely on whether you're underestimating someone or being underestimated." The seed was planted. Jake was starting to see the bigger picture, and in just over 2 weeks, everyone else would too. Saturday, June 15th. Jake's graduation party. We'd rented a tent for the backyard, enough space for 45 people. Teachers, classmates, neighbors, extended family. Daniel and Jennifer had gone all out. Catered food, decorations, the works. I was proud of Jake. Honor roll, varsity baseball, accepted to 3 colleges. This kid had a bright future ahead of him, and everyone had come to celebrate. I was standing near the dessert table, talking with Mrs. Henderson from next door, when I noticed Jennifer gathering a group of people near the gift table. Teachers, some of Daniel's work colleagues, a few neighbors. "So challenging when you're supporting multiple generations," she was saying, her voice carrying across the yard. "Some older family members just don't understand modern financial realities." Mrs. Henderson raised an eyebrow. "Are you talking about your father-in-law?" Jennifer glanced toward me, making sure I could hear. "Pop's a sweet man, but he's been living with us rent-free for 3 years. Daniel and I have been patient, but we're at the point where we need him to contribute or make other arrangements." My chest tightened, but I kept my expression neutral. "Other arrangements?" This from Mr. Foster, Jake's math teacher. "Well, there are lovely senior facilities that cater to people on fixed incomes. Social Security, you know, limited resources." 23 people. I counted them. 23 members of our community, listening to Jennifer explain why her father-in-law was a burden. Mrs. Henderson looked uncomfortable. "George seems like a bright man. Surely there are ways." "Oh, he's intelligent enough," Jennifer interrupted. "Reads financial magazines, gives investment advice to Jake. It's sweet, really, like a hobby. But hobbies don't pay rent." That's when I saw Jake's face. He was standing with a group of his friends, but he'd heard everything. The look of confusion and hurt in his eyes was like a knife to my heart. Jennifer wasn't done. She'd found her audience, and she was performing. The truth is, some people from Pop's generation just don't understand that family support has limits. He's never worked in the modern economy, never built a career like Daniel and I have. Social Security was supposed to be supplemental income, not a retirement plan. "How much is enough?" This from Dr. Martinez, Jake's guidance counselor. "We've asked for $800 a month. That's less than half his Social Security check. Completely reasonable for room and board." Mrs. Henderson shook her head. "That seems steep for family." "Mrs. Henderson, with respect, you don't have elderly relatives living in your house. The costs add up. Food, utilities, medical expenses. And there's the opportunity cost. We could be renting that room to someone who actually contributes to the household." I felt 23 pairs of eyes glancing toward me. Some sympathetic, some curious, some clearly uncomfortable with this public airing of family business. But Jennifer wasn't finished. She was building to her crescendo. "The bottom line is this. Real men contribute. Real adults take responsibility for their lives. Pop reads about money, but he's never actually made money. There's a difference between fantasy and reality. Real men contribute." The same words she'd used that night in the kitchen, but now delivered to teachers who'd known me for 3 years, to neighbors who'd watched me help with yard work and home repairs, to Jake's friends who'd seen me tutoring him. Jake stepped forward. his young voice shaking with emotion. "Mom, that's not fair. Grandpa knows more about money than—" "Jake, sweetheart, you don't understand adult finances yet. Your grandfather's knowledge comes from magazines and TV shows. Daniel and I deal with real money, real investments, real financial planning." I could have stayed silent, could have let it pass like I had so many times before. But then I saw the tears starting in Jake's eyes, saw the confusion on his face as his mother publicly humiliated the grandfather he respected and loved. That's when I made my choice. I walked slowly toward the group, my phone in my hand. 23 people turned to watch me approach. "Jennifer," I said quietly, "you mentioned real money and real investments." "Pop, this isn't the time." "Actually, it's exactly the time." I looked around at the gathered faces. "Since you've made this a public conversation about my financial contributions to this family." "George," Daniel started, but I held up my hand. "Jennifer's right about one thing. It's time for complete honesty about money in this family." I could see confusion in Jennifer's eyes. This wasn't how she'd expected me to respond. "You said real men contribute. You're absolutely right. So let me show everyone what real contribution looks like." I opened my phone and pulled up my TD Ameritrade app. "Jake, come here, son." My grandson walked over, wiping his eyes. "Remember those math exercises we've been doing? Those hypothetical portfolios?" "Yes, sir." "Well, they weren't hypothetical." I turned the phone screen toward the group, and 23 people went completely silent, because there in clear black numbers was an account balance that made Jennifer's marketing salary look like pocket money, $1,427,890. Jake's mouth fell open. Mrs. Henderson gasped. Dr. Martinez blinked hard, like he was trying to process what he was seeing. But Jennifer's face went white as a sheet. That's not real," she whispered. "Oh, it's very real," I said quietly. 8 years of careful investment, built while I was doing nothing during those quiet morning hours. And that's when Tom Bradford walked through our back gate. "George!" Tom Bradford's voice carried across the suddenly silent backyard. "Sorry I'm late, buddy. Traffic was murder on Route 95. 23 faces turned toward the gate as Tom walked in, wearing his usual weekend attire, khakis and a polo shirt with Bradford Auto Group embroidered on the chest. To most of the party guests, he was just another neighbor. But I saw recognition dawn on a few faces. Tom Bradford owned the 3 largest car dealerships in our county. "Tom," I said calmly, "glad you could make it." He walked over and shook my hand warmly, then looked around at the gathered crowd. "Hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. You two know each other?" Tom laughed. "Know each other? George has been my investment advisor for 5 years. This man's guidance helped me turn my business profits into a portfolio worth—" He caught himself, glancing at me. "Well, let's just say my retirement is very secure thanks to George's strategies." The silence in that backyard was deafening. Mrs. Henderson found her voice first. "Investment advisor?" "One of the best," Tom continued, oblivious to the tension he'd walked into. "George doesn't advertise, doesn't have a big office downtown, but the wealthy families in this area? We all know who to call when we need real financial advice." Jennifer's mouth was opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Actually," Tom said, pulling out his phone, "I wanted to run something by you, George. That tech sector rotation we discussed last week? My official advisor is pushing back, but your track record speaks for itself. Mind if we step aside for a minute?" "Not at all." I looked around at the stunned faces. "But first, let me share something with my family." I opened my phone again, but this time I pulled up a different screen. A separate account. Smaller numbers, but still substantial. "Jake, come here, son." My grandson walked over, still looking shell-shocked from the previous revelation. "This account has your name on it. It's been growing for 8 years. Jake stared at the screen. $240,000? Your college fund. Full tuition, room and board, plus living expenses for 4 years. No loans, no debt, no financial stress for you or your parents." The kid's eyes filled with tears. "Grandpa, you did this while living on Social Security?" "Social Security covers my basic needs, Jake. Everything else went into securing your future." Tom Bradford was nodding approvingly. "That's exactly the kind of long-term thinking that makes George such a valuable advisor. Delayed gratification, compound growth, strategic planning, classic wealth-building principles." Dr. Martinez stepped forward. "Mr. Wilson, if you don't mind me asking, what was your background before retirement?" 43 years at Henderson and Associates downtown, senior financial analyst, then portfolio manager. I specialized in wealth preservation and growth strategies for high net worth families. Henderson and Associates? Mrs. Foster, Jake's English teacher, looked impressed. My uncle worked there. He always said they only hired the best. Jennifer finally found her voice. But you've been living so simply. The used car, the basic clothes, the frugality, I said quietly, is the foundation of wealth building. I learned to live on very little so everything else could compound over time. Tom chimed in. George taught me that principle. Live like you're poor when you're rich and you'll stay rich. Best advice I ever got. Jake was studying his college fund balance with wonder. Grandpa, when Mom said you didn't contribute to the family? Oh, but I do contribute, I said, looking directly at Jennifer. I've been contributing $2,000 per month to this family's future. It just wasn't visible on the monthly electric bill. The math hit Jennifer like a physical blow. $2,000 per month. Average monthly investment over 8 years. Some months more, some less, depending on market conditions. But yes, approximately $24,000 per year that could have gone to rent or groceries or luxury items, but instead went into securing Jake's education and our family's financial stability. Tom Bradford was looking around at the stunned faces. Did I miss something? Is there a problem with George's arrangements here? Mrs. Henderson spoke up. Jennifer was just explaining that George needed to start paying rent or move to a senior facility. $800 a month. Tom's eyebrows shot up. $800? For the man who's been building wealth for this family while living like a monk? He shook his head. Jennifer, isn't it? You might want to reconsider that position. But he's unemployed, Jennifer said weakly. He lives on Social Security. By choice, Tom said firmly. George could come work for me tomorrow, managing my dealership portfolios. 6-figure salary, easy. But he prefers the independence of private consulting. Some of the most successful people I know are his clients. I watched Jennifer's worldview crumble in real time. 3 years of assumptions destroyed by 5 minutes of truth. Jake tugged on my sleeve. Grandpa, does this mean you're not poor? No, buddy, I'm not poor. I'm just careful with money. And you're not unemployed? I work every day, Jake, just not in an office with set hours. And you really built my college fund while Mom thought you were doing nothing? I built your college fund because your mother thought I was doing nothing. It gave me the freedom to focus entirely on long-term growth without worrying about monthly expenses. Tom Bradford clapped me on the shoulder. Ladies and gentlemen, you're looking at one of the smartest financial minds in this county. Quiet, humble, and absolutely brilliant with money. Jennifer looked around at the 23 faces staring at her, some sympathetic, some confused, some clearly judging her for how she'd treated me. I didn't know, she whispered. You didn't ask, I said simply. You made assumptions. In finance, assumptions can destroy you. Jake looked up at me with new understanding. That's why you always told me assumptions are dangerous. That's right, son. And this is why we verify our information before making important decisions. The power dynamic in our family had just shifted completely, and everyone could see it. The graduation party continued, but the atmosphere had completely changed. Small groups of people clustered together, whispering about what they'd just witnessed. Jake stayed close to me, still processing the revelation about his college fund. Jennifer had retreated to the house, claiming she needed to check on the food. Tom Bradford and I found a quiet corner near the garden. George, I hate to bring up business at a family celebration, but I wanted to discuss that pharmaceutical stock position you recommended. My accountant is nervous about the volatility. The quarterly earnings report comes out Tuesday. I expect a 12% jump by Friday. Hold the position. You sure? I'm sure. As we talked, I noticed people listening. Not eavesdropping exactly, but definitely paying attention to our conversation in a way they never had before. Mrs. Henderson was standing close enough to hear Tom ask about that municipal bond strategy and my advice about diversifying across 3 sectors. After Tom left, Jake approached me with determined eyes. Grandpa, I need to ask you something directly. Shoot. Are you rich? I looked at this kid who defended me for 3 years while his mother called me a burden. He deserved complete honesty. By most standards, yes, I'm financially secure. How secure? Secure enough that your parents will never need to worry about money if they make smart choices. Secure enough that you'll graduate college debt-free. Secure enough that I can live independently wherever I choose. That last part seemed to hit him. Wherever you choose?
Jake, your mother gave me an ultimatum. Pay rent or find somewhere else to live. She's right that it's time for me to make a decision. Fear flashed in his eyes. You're leaving? I'm considering my options. Come sit with me. We sat on the porch steps while the party continued around us. I pulled out my phone and showed him a different app, a real estate website. I've been looking at properties. There's a nice townhouse across town. 2 bedrooms, small yard, close to the community college where you'll take your first 2 years. But why would you move out now that Mom knows you're not poor? Jake, respect isn't something you can force. Your mother has made it clear how she sees me. That's not going to change just because she learned about my bank account. But the college fund, the investments, everything you've done for our family. I did those things because I love you and your father, not because I expected gratitude or recognition. He was quiet for a moment. Will I still see you? If you move? Every Tuesday and Thursday, just like always, plus weekends when you want. And Jake, that college fund isn't going anywhere. Neither is my commitment to your future. What about Dad? Does he know? I looked through the kitchen window where I could see Daniel and Jennifer having what appeared to be an intense conversation. Your father's about to learn a lot of things. About money, about respect, about what real contribution looks like. As if summoned by our conversation, Daniel appeared on the porch. His face was pale, his expression a mixture of shame and confusion. Dad, can we talk? Jake stood up. I'll give you guys some privacy. Daniel sat down heavily beside me. For a long moment, we just watched the party guests mingling in our backyard. Jennifer told me what she said to you, about paying rent. She did, and about what she said tonight, in front of everyone. I was there. Dad, I'm sorry, I should have stopped it. Should have defended you. Daniel, you're 35 years old. You shouldn't need to defend your father against your wife. You should marry someone who respects your family. He flinched like I'd slapped him. She didn't know. About your finances, your background, any of it. She didn't ask. 3 years, son. She never once asked about my career, my experience, my capabilities. She saw what she wanted to see. But now that she knows? Now that she knows what? That I have money? Daniel, do you think that's what this is about? He looked confused. Isn't it? Son, this is about respect, about dignity, about how you treat family members when you think they can't fight back. I pulled out my phone and showed him the real estate app. I'm buying a place across town, moving out at the end of the month. Dad, no, you don't have to do that. Jennifer understands now. She feels terrible about... Jennifer feels terrible because she got caught, because she embarrassed herself in front of 23 people. That's not the same as understanding why what she did was wrong. Daniel stared at the townhouse listing. But your family. This is your home. Daniel, family isn't about sharing an address. It's about mutual respect, support, and love. I've given all 3 for 3 years. Your wife has given me contempt and ultimatums. She'll change. She's already talking about apologizing, making it up to you. I'm sure she is, and I hope she does change for Jake's sake, and yours. But I won't be living here to witness it. What about Jake's college fund, the investments? Will you still... Jake's future is secure. That doesn't continue change whether I live here or across town. The money was never conditional on Jennifer's approval. Daniel looked like he was about to cry. Dad, I feel like I'm losing my family. You're not losing anything, son. You're gaining clarity. For 3 years you've watched your wife treat your father like a burden, and you've stayed silent. That tells me everything I need to know about the dynamics in your marriage. I was trying to keep the peace. Peace isn't the absence of conflict, Daniel. Peace is the presence of respect. Your wife has never respected me, and you've enabled that by staying silent. Through the window, I could see Jennifer watching us, her face anxious. She wants to talk to you, Daniel said, to apologize. I'm sure she does. But Daniel, some things can't be unsaid. Some humiliations can't be taken back. I stood up and looked down at my son, this man I'd raised, who'd let his wife publicly shame his father because it was easier than confrontation. The house showing is Tuesday at 10. I'll probably make an offer that afternoon. Dad, please, give her a chance to make this right. Son, I am making this right. I'm removing myself from a situation where I'm not wanted or respected. That's not punishment. That's dignity. I walked back toward the party, leaving Daniel sitting alone on the porch steps. Jake found me by the dessert table. Grandpa, are you really moving out? I am, buddy. Because of what Mom said? Because it's time. Jake, you're going to college in 2 years.
Your parents need to learn how to be a family without me here. And I need to live somewhere I'm valued for who I am, not what I contribute financially. But you'll still help me with college applications and financial planning? Every step of the way, that's a promise. Mrs. Henderson approached us. George, I couldn't help but overhear. Are you really looking for a new place? I am. Well, my nephew Rick is a realtor, specializes in properties for discerning buyers. I could give you his card. I'd appreciate that. And George, what that young woman said tonight, that was completely out of line. You've been nothing but gracious to this family. Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. I appreciate that. As the party wound down and guests began leaving, I noticed something interesting. Several people approached me to shake hands and offer contact information. Dr. Martinez asked about investment advice for his daughter's college fund. Mr. Foster mentioned he'd been looking for help with his retirement planning. Word travels fast in small communities. By Monday morning, half the neighborhood would know that the quiet man they'd seen reading financial newspapers wasn't just passing time. He was managing serious wealth. Jennifer's public humiliation of me had backfired spectacularly. Instead of diminishing my status, it had revealed my true position in ways I never could have arranged myself. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people see the truth. Monday morning brought the first wave of consequences. I was sitting in my recliner reading the Wall Street Journal and checking my portfolio when my phone started ringing. The first call was from Rick Henderson, Mrs. Henderson's nephew, the realtor. Mr. Wilson, my aunt gave me your number. She said you might be interested in looking at some properties. I am. Great. I've got 3 townhouses that might interest you, all in excellent neighborhoods, close to the community college, move-in ready. When would you like to schedule viewings? This afternoon works. After I hung up, Daniel emerged from the kitchen with his coffee, looking like he hadn't slept. Dad, was that about houses? It was. You're really doing this? I told you I was. Jennifer appeared in the doorway, still in her bathrobe. She looked terrible. Red eyes, pale skin, the whole defeated package. Pop, can we talk, please? I set down my newspaper. What would you like to discuss? Saturday night. What I said, how I said it. She came into the living room and sat on the edge of the couch. I was completely wrong. About everything. Your contributions, your background, your value to this family. Okay. I want to apologize. Sincerely. And I want to ask you to reconsider moving out. I studied her face. She looked genuinely remorseful, but I'd learned to be careful about assumptions. Jennifer, what specifically are you apologizing for? For calling you unemployed. For saying you don't contribute. For threatening you with nursing homes. For embarrassing you in front of our friends and neighbors. And? She looked confused. And? You missed something important? Daniel spoke up from the kitchen doorway. She's trying to apologize, Dad. I know what she's trying to do. But an incomplete apology isn't worth much. Jennifer's brow furrowed. What did I miss? You apologized for what you said Saturday night, but Saturday night wasn't the beginning of this pattern. For 3 years, you've treated me with contempt. You've dismissed my knowledge, excluded me from family decisions, and made it clear that you saw me as a burden. But I didn't know. Jennifer, you didn't know because you didn't want to know. I've been living in your house for 3 years. Did you ever once ask about my background, my career, my qualifications? She was quiet. When Jake would tell you I was teaching him about investments, did you ever wonder why he was learning so much? When you saw me reading financial publications every morning, did you ever think to ask why? I assumed. You assumed I was a useless old man living on government handouts. That assumption shaped how you treated me every single day for 3 years. Daniel stepped into the room. Dad, she's trying to make amends. No, Daniel, she's trying to undo the embarrassment she caused herself Saturday night. There's a difference. My phone rang again. Tom Bradford. George, sorry to bother you so early, but I've got Linda Peterson on my other line. You remember Linda? She owns those boutiques downtown. She heard about your situation and wants to know if you'd consider managing her investment portfolio. Apparently her current advisor isn't performing. I glanced at Jennifer, whose eyes had gone wide. Tom, let me call you back this afternoon. I'm house hunting today. House hunting? George, what's going on? Time for a change of scenery. I'll explain later. After I hung up, Jennifer looked stricken. People are calling you for business? Word travels fast in small communities. But this means people think I was wrong to ask you to leave? Jennifer, people think you publicly humiliated a man who's been quietly managing wealth for some of the most successful families in this county. They're not wrong. Daniel sat down across from me. Dad, how many families do you advise? Currently, 7. Tom Bradford, Linda Peterson, the Martinez family, Dr. Chen, who owns the medical practice, retired Judge Williams, the Kowalski family, who owns the construction company, and Sarah Mitchell, who inherited her husband's insurance business. Jennifer's mouth fell open. Those are some of the wealthiest people in town. Yes, they are. And by Wednesday, they'll all know that my own family didn't think I was worth basic respect. Oh, God, Jennifer whispered. What have I done? You've shown your true character. The question now is whether you're sorry you revealed it or sorry you had it to reveal in the first place. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and couldn't help smiling. What is it? Daniel asked. Jake. He's at school. But he wanted me to know that 3 of his teachers asked him about his grandfather this morning. Apparently, Dr. Martinez has been telling people about the college fund. Jennifer put her head in her hands. Everyone's going to know. Everyone's going to know how I treated you. They already know, Jennifer. 23 people witnessed it Saturday night. But my job, my reputation, what if people at work find out? And there it was, the real concern. Not that she'd hurt me or damaged our family relationships. She was worried about her professional reputation. Daniel was looking at his wife with an expression I'd never seen before, something between disappointment and disgust. Jennifer, he said quietly, are you more upset about what you did to my father, or about how it makes you look? She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. Her priorities were written all over her face. My phone rang again. This time it was Dr. Martinez. George, I hope you don't mind me calling. I wanted to thank you for what you've done for Jake. That college fund, it's extraordinary. And I wanted to ask if you might have time to discuss my daughter's education planning. She's a sophomore, and frankly, my current financial advisor doesn't have your track record. I'd be happy to help, Carlos. Let me get settled in my new place, and I'll call you back. New place? I'm moving out today, actually. Looking at a townhouse across town. George, if you don't mind me saying, your family would be crazy to let you go. After I hung up, I looked at Daniel and Jennifer. Dr. Martinez sends his regards. The weight of what Jennifer had cost this family was starting to sink in. Not just my presence in their house, but my connections, my expertise, my quiet influence in their community. Dad, Daniel said slowly, how much business could you bring to our family? Through your connections, I mean? Daniel, I've been bringing business to your family for 3 years. I just did it quietly. Tom Bradford bought his last 2 cars from Peterson Motors because I mentioned Daniel worked there. Linda Peterson used Daniel's landscaping company for her store renovations because I suggested it. Dr. Martinez referred 3 patients to Jennifer's medical marketing firm because I told him she was competent. Jennifer's face went white. You've been helping our careers? Family takes care of family, Jennifer. Even when family doesn't notice or appreciate it. The full scope of her mistake was finally hitting her. She hadn't just insulted a harmless old man. She'd alienated a connected, respected member of their community who'd been quietly working behind the scenes to benefit their family for years, and now that was ending. Because respect, once lost, is very hard to earn back. Tuesday afternoon, I signed the papers on a beautiful 2-bedroom townhouse on Maple Street. Hardwood floors, modern kitchen, small garden in back, move-in ready, as Rick Henderson had promised. Wednesday morning, I was packing my belongings when Jake knocked on my bedroom door. Grandpa, can I help? Of course, buddy, grab those books from the shelf. As we packed, Jake was unusually quiet. Finally, he spoke up. Are you disappointed in us? In Mom and Dad? I stopped folding clothes and looked at him. Jake, I'm not disappointed in you. You defended me when your mother was being unfair. You recognized my knowledge when she dismissed it. You showed respect and love even when it was difficult. But what about them? Your parents are adults. They make their own choices and live with the consequences. I can't be disappointed in people for being exactly who they choose to be. Mom's been crying a lot. She keeps saying she didn't know. Ignorance isn't the same as innocence, Jake. Your mother didn't know because she didn't want to know. There's a difference. He nodded slowly. Grandpa, will you still teach me about money? About investing and compound interest and all that? Every Tuesday and Thursday, just like always. That's a promise. And you'll still help me with college applications? I'll be there for every step. Financial planning, application essays, choosing the right school, everything.
And the college fund, that's really mine? It's really yours, plus whatever it grows to over the next 2 years.
By the time you graduate high school, you'll probably have close to $300,000 for education expenses.
His eyes went wide. That much? Compound interest is powerful, buddy, especially when you start early and stay consistent. As we carried boxes to my car, I noticed Daniel watching from the kitchen window. He looked lost, like he was trying to figure out how his family had fallen apart so quickly. Jennifer emerged from the house as I was loading the last box. "Pop, please, one more time. Can we try again? I promise things will be different." I turned to face her. "Jennifer, what would be different?" "I'd treat you with respect. I'd ask about your background, your expertise. I'd appreciate your contributions." "Because now you know I have money." "No, because now I know I was wrong." "You were wrong 3 years ago. You were wrong 2 years ago. You were wrong last month. The only thing that changed was getting caught publicly." She started crying again.
"Please don't leave us. Please don't take your connections and your knowledge and your influence away from this family."
And there was the truth. She wasn't sorry about how she'd treated me. She was sorry about losing access to what I could provide. "Jennifer, respect isn't transactional. You can't withdraw it for 3 years and then try to make a deposit when you need the account balance." Jake hugged me goodbye. "I'll see you Thursday?" "Thursday at 4, just like always." Daniel finally came outside. "Dad, I know I can't undo the last 3 years, but I want you to know. I see it now. How wrong this all was. How wrong I was to let it happen." "Daniel, the good news is you're only 35. You have time to learn from this. Time to decide what kind of husband and father you want to be." "What do you mean?" "I mean you can choose to be a man who protects his family's dignity, or you can choose to be a man who sacrifices it for domestic peace."
"That's entirely up to you."
He nodded slowly. "I choose dignity." "Good. Then make sure your future actions match that choice." As I drove away from the house I'd lived in for 3 years, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Relief that I no longer had to pretend Jennifer's disrespect didn't hurt. Relief that I could live somewhere I was valued for who I was, not tolerated because I was family. Relief that Jake would see his grandfather standing up for himself rather than accepting mistreatment. My new townhouse felt like freedom. No more walking on eggshells. No more swallowing pride for the sake of family harmony. No more watching Jake struggle with the tension between loving his grandfather and keeping peace with his mother. That evening, I got a call from Mrs. Henderson. "George, I hope you're settling in well. And I hope you know that everyone in the neighborhood thinks Jennifer was completely out of line." "Thank you, Margaret. I appreciate that."
"There's something else. My bridge club meets Thursday afternoons, and we were wondering, would you consider talking to us about financial planning for retirees? Several of the ladies have been struggling with their investment decisions." I smiled. "I'd be happy to help." "Wonderful. And George, this community is lucky to have you. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." After I hung up, I sat in my new living room and thought about the lesson in all this. Respect yourself enough to walk away from people who don't value you. Age doesn't mean you have to accept mistreatment. Family doesn't mean you have to tolerate disrespect. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to stay where you're not wanted. And sometimes, walking away with dignity teaches better lessons than staying and fighting ever could. I opened my laptop and started typing a response to the messages I'd received from potential new clients. After all, I had work to do. If you're watching this, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my situation? Let me know in the comments below.